So many of us work with challenges that are common across government, yet we often tackle agency by agency. So sometimes courage is not about delivering, or it is not about building something new, but it's about taking the first step towards doing things differently, collectively. So this session explores information asset management through that lens, how we can move from fragmented approaches to shared solutions, creating greater consistency, visibility, and value across the wider public sector. So our speaker today, Elias Wyber, a chief evangelist at TalentJam, is well known to many across the government. Over a career spanning technology, data, capability, and transformation, Elias has helped organizations navigate change and rethink how public sector problems can be solved at scale. His experience ranges from entrepreneurship to leadership roles in several government agencies, giving him a unique perspective on both the challenges we face and the opportunities ahead. So please join me in welcoming Elias. Thank you.
Kia ora, everyone. I've got old man's eyes, so I can choose to see you or this, so there's been lots of stuff going on. Why am I here? Thank you for the very flattering introduction. I've been involved, and I think Chris talked about it earlier, standing on the shoulders of giants. I've been involved in the information asset register work for, it feels like 15 or so years. Jim Clendon, Regine Deleu, Jan Wigmore, Tracy Parsons, Wendy. There's like a huge host of people who've been involved, and I'm just a guy at the end who thinks about how do we solve a system problem. There's all this work that goes on beforehand. So what I want to do is very quickly drill down at the narrow view of this particular solution as an example of something, and then I want to zoom out and look at the wider pattern and what we can do. The example I'm using is the information asset register, and because it illustrates a type of problem, and several people have referred to it today, that we've all got the same problems. Like when Chris talked about it this morning, we're a tiny little country. There's 5 million of us. That's the size of Birmingham. So if you think about, okay, we've got this problem, we need information asset registers, all of the agencies are using them. DIA built this thing, Jan Wigmore made a spreadsheet, there was a knowledge management working group that socialised it with the agencies. And I know 10 or 15 of us did it. I mean, we were one of the first, and we helped several other agencies. Every single one of us added a column or didn't use a section because some bits of it weren't relevant to our problem at the time, or it was missing information that we needed to capture. So we'd added things, they'd added things, it was all different. Some agencies built their own thing. They went out and there was a very, very clever, I think it was an access database at MB, which was built by the person that ran it, and I don't know what happened to it when she left, but I can guess. And that was one of several of those sorts of things. Some people had their own spreadsheet. And at around that time, and I'd have to check, 2015, 2017, around then, the responsibility for the asset register shifted from GCDO to archives. And that's fine, but they didn't move the resources. And suddenly you had archives responsible for something that they didn't have the resources to support. We've got a statutory obligation, but we're not resourced to do it. And that's at the agency level, and I was responsible for this. I still think like a public servant, but I was a public servant up until late last year, and I was responsible for this. We were under-resourced. It was lagging. I don't know about anybody else, but our disposal authority had lapsed, and we hadn't done disposals for probably 8 years. And that's not weird, that's common. And the main reason is because the stewards, who are the people that know about the information, don't know they're responsible for it, and they don't know what they're supposed to do with it. And it isn't recorded anywhere. And that was actually, and to be clear, this isn't a criticism, and I wrote this in big writing because I'm not criticising anybody here. This is what happens when you're operating under resource constraint. There's nothing, it's not a failure, it's a system design problem, not a personal problem. But that steward thing was what motivated us to start thinking about this as how would we solve it. So what would it look like? And the thing here, and I think this is, it's funny because all through the talk, and Grayson mentioned it earlier, we're all repeating ourselves. I mean, he said half of what I've got to say. Chris said the other half of what I've got to say. I could sit down now and you could just kind of merge those things and it would cover it. But we're using slightly different language. So the system view, Sir Brian talked about that yesterday. Honesty, which is make it transparent and measurable. If we don't admit that we have a problem, we can't solve the problem. And we're not talking, this is where the courage stuff starts to come into it. We need to have the courage to say, I don't know, or I think this might not be under control, in order to be able to work out how to fix it. And one of the things that cripples us is that we think, like when we do a transformation, they go, great, okay, I've given you $20 million, are we there yet? And you sit there and you're like, okay, this is going to take 5 years, and the incremental benefits are worth the investment that we've put in. We have to start thinking of progress as opposed to just we did or didn't arrive. Because most projects, and I've been involved in a lot of transformation, I would say 80% of the benefit comes from 20% of the work. But at the beginning, I don't know which 20% that's going to be. And it's when you do it and you start, oh, this thing worked, and we discover that there's a way of making this easier. There's a whole bunch of benefits. That drives the value piece that Sir Brian talked about as well. And the thing that we've done, and so this is, several of you have seen it, it's all over the place. We're talking to archives, we've talked to lots of agencies. So we built a thing because we were approaching it with that logic. It's compliant with New Zealand and Australian archives rules, identify, classify, govern, common model for information asset management. It is back to the conversation earlier about thinking about Rachel's excellent channeling. The information and data assets that we hold, thinking of them as assets with an investment life cycle and a value and so on, that governance part is something that we're not able to do because we don't have a view across our estate. So what would a tool look like that did that? I'm happy to talk to this in detail about anybody that with anyone that cares, but I'm using it as an example. It's not, this applies whether it's ministerials or anything else that we're looking at. So zooming out to the wide thing, and this is, I wanted to talk to that so you get the idea. It's possible to do these things in a $2 way. $1 problems. I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. If I'm the regional manager for an agency and I deal with Taranaki, and so I'm sitting there and I'm going to have a list of all of the providers I've got in Taranaki. And I might have that in a CRM, but I could have it in a spreadsheet or a Word document. It works for me. I don't need anything more. If it was an application that sorts them into when I've visited them, I could vibe code something. And it would be fine because I'm the only one using it and I can tell if it's wrong. It's a local problem, trivial, cost to solve. $10 problems, I go out and I get ServiceNow, or I hire Datacom to build a thing for me or whatever. When you go out and solve a $10 problem, you get support contracts and training and all of these things that come with it. There's this wicked middle though, the $2 problems that we all have that we're solving in a piecemeal way. So no vendor's going to go and solve the ministerials problem, for example. No vendor's going to solve the information asset register problem. I could build something on, someone talked earlier about the Waikato library tool that I can't remember the name of. There's Weka. It was Chris built it, yes. There's all these things that exist that solve parts of the problem, but they're not at a system scale. And individually, it's not worth us solving them. We just do a $1 solution and it works for us. But if we were to take the $2 solution, and this is just some examples of some $2 problems. So I don't know, anyone knows about Croissant? We built it, MFE, when I was at MFE. We built that as an all-of-government tool. It was supposed to go into Govis. It was in partnership with DIA. And then Govis was disestablished as we were building the tool. And so MFE ended up being the custodian for something. Well, that's not MFE's job, right? So how does that work? The Information Asset Register we've talked about. Skills intelligence, it's a talent platform thing. Procurement governance, not a procurement management tool, because that's a $10 problem. But how many of your managers know the procurement rules? The answer is almost none of them, because we don't get exposure to that. And it isn't do a training module now you know it, because I only do procurement once or twice a year. I don't even remember. So how do you make sure that they are following the rules without imposing an extra workload? Ministerials and OAAs, another thing that we all have. And you'll be thinking of dozens. If you put into Slido some of the things that you can think of in your area that you think might be $2 problems, and I'll get to why. It's not to tell me, it's to tell each other. So how do you do it? And this is something, it comes back, funnily enough, the way you do this is exactly what Govis is about. So the whole idea of connect, share, learn, in this one it's actually the other way around. Connect, name your shared problem. To do that, you've got to talk to each other. And then you've got to accept that an 80% solution to that problem is a minimum investment that will get you something useful. If you try to do 100%, then it's going to be so bespoke and tailored to you that you're back in the $1 problem space again. Solve it once as a collective, and then share the effort and the benefit. So if taking Croissant or the IAR as an example, we've built a thing, it's available to everyone, but it's only really justified if everyone uses it. And I don't mean every agency has to use this thing, but if you agree that you've got that common problem, work together to solve it. And the principles that are down there, it's the stuff we've already talked about. The goal isn't to build a 100% gold-plated solution that does everything. It's, if you think of, I've got 80% or 90% of my problems solved, that little bit at the end might have been an exception that I did manually anyway. So aim for that prize, the progress, rather than the 100% outcome. That's kind of it. The thing that we have, it's an opportunity to be courageous, and that step that we have to take is the conversation. We have to talk about it. Surface that there's a problem, share ways of approaching a solution, and then work together to produce a thing. And you can grab, if you scan that, you get my details. I'm happy to talk to anyone about any of these things. I'm not canvassing for work. My title's Chief Evangelist, right? So I get to stand up there on the mount and preach. No, yes, praise be, brothers. No, what I want is to build the biggest possible pond. I'm not trying to be big in the pond, because if the pond is big, then we've got resilience and the ability to adapt to when things happen. If the pond's too small, we're not adaptive and we get into trouble. Thank you. Questions, if there are any. And I'm fine with people shouting, because I hate that Slido thing. So if someone goes, yeah, me, I'm happy to talk to you, but I will have to get rid of my glasses.
Thank you for challenging us to think in a different way. We don't have many questions on the Slido, but I want to know more about, what would you do to help the agencies, how they can approach, because it's always the dollar question.
So there's a couple of things that I've been talking to a few agencies already about this. We talked, Karen in the panel session yesterday was talking about the procurement problem. It's very difficult to procure something from a small company. It's actually really hard. because the amount of work is exactly the same, and Jim and I were talking about this earlier, the amount of work is exactly the same for you to hire somebody to come in to clean your windows for 2 days a month as it is to hire IBM to come in and do a whole bunch of work. And so there's a procurement thing where we need to, I think, work out a way of making that easier for small companies. And I don't mean just mine, as a general principle. The second thing is that you, and I'm talking about myself here as well, when you're sitting there and you're responsible for a thing, we talk about this a lot, the sharing and the boundaries. My responsibilities are this, and I've got a letter of performance expectations that says I'm going to do certain things. And it's not necessarily clear that this thing is part of my job or not. I got a lot of rope to be able to do stuff on the side. I was on lots of the panels and things. Not everyone has that opportunity. So there's something about hiring in or borrowing, and I'm happy to, you can borrow me, you don't need to buy me. Hiring in someone who can help you think about what that would look like so that you can get to defining a solution well enough to have the conversation. So the example is I was talking to Rachel earlier, the maturity assessment for the algorithm charter. So we built a maturity assessment. How many of you know there is one? Right? Yeah? But most of you won't even have seen it. And so when you're sitting there going, oh, but we don't know what to do, there's already an instrument for that. And we can help circulate those things and share. It's the conversation. That's what mainly drives it.
That's cool. You know, you had one of your first slides there, and then you've got the common register, the homegrown solutions, and then transfer to archives. You know, a lot of agencies, they don't have that step, transfer to archives, or that gap there, because nothing ever gets retired.
Yeah.
Nothing
No
ever
disposals.
gets.
Yep.
Yeah. So how do you help understanding or bridging that gap?
In Tool, basically, so I didn't want to get into the specifics of it, but okay. So what the tool does is it allows your stewards to determine the status of the records they are responsible for. And as an IM function, your job is then to help them do that work rather than for you to work out what it is and do it yourself. My team I used to send them home. I'd come into the office in the afternoon and in the evening, and they'd be there 6, 7 o'clock at night because they had to do this work. And I was like, no, you don't have to do this work. Go home. Because as an IM function, we tend to take responsibility for it. And that's great, but it isn't actually our responsibility to carry. So I think supporting stewards to identify what needs to be done and then doing the disposal work. So the tool automates all the boring bits is the basic idea.
So how would you convince, how is IR different to something else already there?
Do you mean from a point of view of finding small solutions?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think they are. So I don't know anyone's familiar with Yes Minister. I treat it as kind of on-job training thing. We watch it. My daughter, who's like now 15, but this is when she was like 10, used to say, "Can we watch Yes Minister?" It's like homework. So in Yes Minister, there is an episode in which some administrative change is proposed, and everyone sits around and they all say, "Oh yes, we think this is a great idea. Unfortunately, it won't work here." We all do that. It's so annoying because, yeah, we'll work here. You'll get 80%. And that little bit that you don't need or the bit that's missing from what you do need, you build a solution for that problem. Don't build a solution for this bit uniquely. Because who was it said, I think you were talking about each agency is doing the same thing. We're all standing up data teams. We're all standing up these things. Learn from each other, use each other's material. Because 90% of the time, your problem is actually exactly the same.
Absolutely. We've got one slide or question now. Okay. The Government Enterprise Architect for New Zealand, the GENS, has a concept called Common Business Capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It includes many of the $2 questions
Absolutely.
and $10 problems.
Mm-hmm.
We want to identify more where we can work together.
Yeah, yes. That's the thing. Surface them, and then approach. Like, pick one. Who has this problem? Get together, work out what a solution would look like. It's a lunchtime meeting with a whiteboard. It's not 4 BAs in a 6-month project. And then at the end of that process, you can say, okay, I know what to do. And then it's, okay, how do we make that happen? Private organisations, we solve $2 problems for people. That's what my business does. But you can ask Datacom, you can ask, all these companies can do it. But they're always going to come with a $10 solution because they know they can sell them. But what you need isn't always a $10 solution. The devil example would be you could build an information asset register in ServiceNow. It would work. It'd be easy. What would it cost? Right? And I'm a lot. Oh, yeah.
So I've seen public service agencies prototype and pilot with innovative NZ companies and then use GETS to procure an international product. The people at the agency are confused as to why they didn't use the tool they prototyped and piloted. And how do we make it easier to work with innovative NZ supplier?
So I've been ranting, and poor Jim over there had me rant at him like years ago about this. The procurement rules are broken in a particular way. An RFP isn't something a small organisation can reasonably respond to. It's actually not possible. So the amount of time, if you think of the effort of responding to an RFP, if I've got templates and I've got a team that do it, and heaven forbid I'm using AI, I wasn't going to talk about that, but it could happen. The ability to produce the product, I mean, everyone jokes about the big four copy replace the business name and submit the same proposal all the time. You can do RFPs like that in a big organisation, but in a small organisation, you don't have the bandwidth. The entire team, like I run a business that's got 3 main full-time staff and 1 part-time, and for us to do an RFP, yeah, I can do it, but it's probably not worth it. And so I think the first thing is some kind of lightweight procurement process that's fit for purpose for small organisations. And the second thing is when you define your requirements during the RFP process, stop telling people what it must do and start talking about outcomes. Because when you say, and Catalyst and various others will all go, yes, that, because we keep specifying things that we want it to do, which are in fact the product probably that we think we want to get. And by doing that, we're narrowing the opportunity for solutions that, like, I'm no genius, right? There'll be solutions to this problem that I haven't thought of. So when I write my requirements, I want to say these are the outcomes I want. And if you've got some clever way of solving that problem, then great, let's talk. Because at the moment we're saying, I want a thing that looks exactly like Microsoft Dynamics, but I'm not allowed to say that, so I just list the features of Microsoft Dynamics. And then when someone comes along who doesn't use Microsoft Dynamics, but they've got something else, they fail on those 3, so we cross them out.
Elias, it's hard for even large companies to procure.
Yeah.
Like at 5 o'clock today, I have this deadline for the 5th RFP, which I've been working on this month. And it costs a serious amount of money to do all of these things. And half of the outcomes often are predetermined before the RFP is even written. Yeah, it's a box ticking exercise as opposed to a true exploration of what's out in the market, right? So you're right, the procurement rules, for want of a better term, need to be revisited.
Well, those were the questions, but there's definitely a recommendation for you to watch Utopia.
Yes.
With the box of tissues.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've tried actually, and I can't. And the reason I can't is because Yes Minister is clearly satire and very, very funny. Utopia was just painfully like where I was working at the time. And I couldn't. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. This was really great.